Hi, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to a Tennis Manager 25 tutorial on training and development. Let's get right into things. I have a number of athletes that we're going to take a look at here for examples on how to do things effectively and efficiently within the game to maximize the development of your athletes and their performance over the course of a season. Now, unless you have a massive budget, one of the key components to success in the game is finances, and sponsorship contracts are a big part of that success. One of the most common things you're going to see, and usually I hold out on signing a contract unless it has one of these components, is a simple participation in 20 tournaments to get a large bonus. And you not only get it on the outfit side, but you can get it on the racket side as well. Collectively, it's a huge payday. And if you have a large number of athletes on your team and they all achieve that goal, we're talking about millions of dollars at the tail end of your season. Quickly doing the math to sort out what 20 tournaments looks like over the course of a season. Starting at week 1, the season ends on week 47. However, we do not have 47 weeks in which to get those 20 tournaments. It's less. For one, week 47 is the World Cup finals. International stuff does not count. There's qualifiers for international, there is group stage, and there is finals. Those 3 weeks are subtracted, already dropping us from 47 now to 44 weeks. If you were to sign up for a tournament every other week, that means over a 40-week period, you would get your 20 tournaments in. For error, a little cushion for the occasional take an extra week off and make it a 3-week stretch instead of a 2-week stretch. You have the occasion for a back-to-back if you're trying to get into a specific level of tournament, like a 1K where they happen to be back-to-back or just the 500s. There is wiggle room to get your 20 tournaments in, but in general, you need every other week. That means the first key is, even though it's a little bit time consuming, but you get used to it pretty quickly, turning off automatic registrations and handling tournament registration yourself. The AI has a tendency to overload your calendar, play way too many tournaments, which stunts your development. You need to maximize training weeks. Now, if finances are not an issue whatsoever, you can afford to avoid those bonuses, and you can take an athlete and practically sit a year out and just train and train and train and train. Could be a very valuable tool to maximize development of an athlete. However, they are going to avoid bonuses, and you are not going to hit your targets for the year, most likely, with that player if they're not playing. And without hitting their goals for the season, their player satisfaction is going to be 0, and they're not going to want to re-sign. There's a whole wealth of complications that come with doing that. So it's a really risky move. I would never do that in the final year of a contract. That would ensure that they won't re-sign with you. But if it's the first year of a contract, first year player just coming into the pros, you could. Because for one, they're not making that much money that year, and the bonus that they're going to get for that year really is not that much either. The tighter you're playing your cards, the more difficult, the higher difficulty level that you're playing, the more the finances matter. It's going to impact things greatly. But you could get away with it if you wanted. So moving into the main reason that you are here for this video, and that is the training schedule in order to maximize the development of your athletes, assuming that they are back and forth from tournament participation to development weeks to training weeks. How do you manage that? How do you get through that? A lot of what you can do can happen in a much faster, more efficient way straight from the supervision screen that we're now at. In my game, it's late July and it's Monday morning. First key is you always want to do this prep your week Monday morning instead of a midweek thing. Otherwise, you're less efficient. And if you do it at the end of the week, well, it's all about next week anyway. So Monday morning kicks off the start, and you're able to make your adjustments right away at the beginning of the week to get the most out of your athletes. Also, being that it's late July, just a quick note that my current team that I have here, you can see that all or nearly all of our goals have been met already for the year. The data contained in these 3 columns is everything on deciding what you do with your calendar. They dictate where you go with your training more often than not, and I'll explain why here in just a moment. This player, Sawyer, having just won a tournament yesterday, she won a final yesterday, she's exhausted. This player, Igna, also, but she's got better stamina ratings and doesn't feel the impact of her win quite as much. This player, Nos, is coming off of an injury, and that is everything to why his morale has hit rock bottom. He has not been able to compete for the last month, slowly decaying the form. Both of these were top-notch. Now they're the opposite and getting back into regular training this week for the first time. But the default screen you can see is prep for next tournament. That is nearly every time if you are in a training week and you have a tournament next week, which if you're doing every other week would literally be every training week, the default is to go to prep next tournament. I do not like prep next tournament personally, and here are some of the reasons why. 1, this is what it looks like by default. Default is medium workload, and the default is, well, tournament next week, let's do some prep. And you can see that there's a lot of care, there is a lot of rest, what that's going to do, and there's maybe some form bonuses along the way, but injury risk is incredibly low, and the training is incredibly light, which means development is stunted massively. That already is the reason why I stay away from it. Is it good for morale? Is it good for recovery? Does it provide some form bonuses? Sure. But none of them are big bonuses except for on the physical condition recovery side. Now, your athlete has a lot of attributes that go into what makes them them. Nearly all of them are in your control. There's actually only 4 that are out of your control. Those 4: composure, killer instinct, fighting spirit, and then double, as in performance in doubles. Now, this one only matters for the international stuff, and there's no way to train it. But the composure, killer instinct, and fighting spirit come in bunches at major moments of their career. If you go and win a much higher level tournament than anything that you have participated in and won prior, you can see a massive boost. Generally, it's 4 points all coming at the exact same time. Now, this player, Nos, is still very young. He's only 18 years of age. He's recently moved into the pro ranks and just cracked the top 100. He has just recently had his very first 4-point boost. And you can see that these particular attributes are lagging way behind everything else, but generally they will come on their own and be a bit of a factor regarding age. As they get older and get more experienced, they pick up those particular attributes. But everything else is in your realm of control. The other elements that we control are morale, form, physical condition, and game plan, also surface mastery. But if we want to get away from the default training of prep for next tournament, what do we do instead? Now, that's going to vary a lot on circumstances. However, there's a general direction that you would want to go. Priorities. How do you set those priorities? Well, first and foremost, I look at 2 categories. To get an overview, these are your technical attributes. There's a lot of them. These are your physical attributes. There's less than half in comparison. Now, the trainable mental attributes happens to be just 3. However, when we're comparing these 3 subcategories, the most OP when it comes to what it gives your athlete performance-wise is physical. The better they are physically, the better they will perform on court. Having technical attributes with no mental or physical is still going to lead to a lot of losses. Having mental without any physical or technical is still going to lead to a lot of losses. But having physical without much mental or technical can lead to a lot of victories. So the first category, the first set of attributes that you should focus your attention on is physical, followed by the much easier to master 3 mental attributes, because you can really get those up quickly. And then lastly, by technical attributes. And you can see from this example here with our young 18-year-old who's already a 3-star talent and a late bloomer, world-class potential. At just 18, you can see that all of the physicals are a 14 plus and our controllable mentals are 14 plus. That's the happy zone for me once you get them there, especially when you have form bonuses, which we had before the injury. This is our injured one here. These are your form bonuses, and they are just straight additions or subtractions on that base attribute, right? The attribute maxes out at a 20, minimum's a 1. A 14 with a -2 means Nos is going to go into a match with a 12 speed right now. The form bonus is a swing of a -2 or a +2. However, you do have other factors besides form that can impact attributes. In this case, our counter attribute has a -1 due to the racket that Nos uses. Also, some of your attributes, the composure, killer instinct, and fighting spirit, is not dictated by form, but by morale. But form's big, because a -2 or a +2, a 4-point swing, when we're talking about an attribute that maxes out at 20, is a huge difference. We're talking about a swing of 20% of a player's skill. But that's out of 20. Now the reality is it's much more. Let's say they're average. They're right at a 10. A 4-point swing on a 10 is actually a 40% difference in skill, top to bottom. So while development itself is incredibly important, and you want all of your athletes to get better and better and better as time goes on, you need to maintain satisfaction and keep their contracts coming. And in order to do that, you have to have a blend of development and maximizing performance, because the form bonus alone can be a huge swing on their quality going in. Their morale, their physical condition can all have a massive impact with their on-court performance. So when it comes to selecting the training for the week, priority 1, get their physicals up to a 13 plus before I change their focus to mental, to get that in that same range, to then turn my focus for the remainder of their career to the technicals and bring those along, and slowly bring up the physical and mental alongside it from there, with the technical being that big focus to turn them into champions as opposed to competitors who can win consistently at various levels along the path to Grand Slams. But ever since Tennis Manager 24, with a new system introduced, the morale and the form now vary wildly on a week-to-week basis. It does not take much to drastically change either of those variables on an athlete's week-to-week performance. So if an athlete has all the right conditions, my default is to go to what priority we are working on, specifically physical first. So in the case of Sella here, she has excellent form, her morale is great, and her physical condition is very good. So I will set her to physical fitness training. That will help her boost that category immediately. In Stoyer, things aren't perfect. Yes, the form is right where we need it to. The morale at correct is good enough. It's not great, but it's not a penalty at least. Because she just won a tournament yesterday, she's exhausted. If you ever break down category by category, physical development is the most exhausting. It uses a lot of energy. Therefore, they are not going to recover much physical condition. Now, the prep for next tournament would certainly help with that, but there's no benefit, really, to using the prep for next tournament. The way that I manage to bring the mental along is I use it as a physical recovery. If they're exhausted, I go to tactics and mental. And occasionally, we can go into other categories that bring in specifics to train, like game plans. So even though Stoyer still needs that priority one of physical fitness, she's too tired. And so the tactics and mental will do a lot to help her recover that physical condition, but also give us our second tier development weight. So this one happens fairly organically. If they're succeeding, going late into tournament by tournament by tournament, then we're also going to be able to bring up their tactics and mental to go along with that physical fitness. However, when we get to Tobin does have good physical fitness. That would be prime territory for a physical fitness training week. However, we lack form. And that huge swing means that he's going to have first round exit after first round exit after first round exit. We need to pick up his form so that he can also pick up his performance and help his morale and help his ranking and help achieve that satisfaction, which is a necessary component getting through. So in this case, when form is bad, I go for peak form. Now at neutral, I'm okay. It's when it's at the two lower, here or here, for peak form instead. Now, Igna is somebody who's a little bit in between. We have the form, we have the morale, the physical condition, not very good. For me, the tipping point is about 80%. For 80% and above, I'm going to go for the physical fitness. Below, I switch to the tactics and mental to bring that number up. Now, Nos is in a strange place. Morale is bad, form so-so, but we do have enough physical condition. But we also have a recovering injury. And I do not know for sure what the factor is. You can see injury risk is very light, kind of across the board. But I fear that when somebody's injured, I fear that I'm going to make it worse. And so I tend to stay away from physical training, which is the most intensive. I mean, we have somebody doing physical, but it's still very light, but that's because they're fit. Here I'm kind of caught between the zone of whether I want to try to help with their form, help with the tactics and mental side of things. In this particular case, I would pick form. Every once in a while, I'll take something like short rally or long rally. I never just use holidays. Most of the time, we don't have to get into the individual training itself. This is going to be sufficient to keep them busy, keep them active, and keep them developing at a high level. However, when circumstances are right, and this is our closest example, not quite there though. Morale's good, form is excellent, physical condition is also high. What I'll have a tendency to do, and if we're already into like say phase 3 and we're training technical, I'll use it same timing. If our physical condition is high, we can go into an athlete and go into their training page and we can alter, we can tweak their training. Now there's more than one way to do that. For one, you can change the workload to heavy and it's going to fill in some extra sessions. That still provides a generic work set, so I never use that. I always keep it on medium. We can also, through a second method, take additional training priority and choose something like, say, let's develop their return. And it's going to shift a good amount of the sessions automatically to something that's going to give us an additional training priority. However, what it does is it takes away sessions and replaces them with sessions of a certain type, which means there's a trade-off. You are gaining something, but you're also subtracting something in order to make that happen. I personally stay away from that. If we're at 88% and we want their focus to be on something specific, well, that's a good way to do it. When an attribute goes untrained for a long period of time, it will begin to decline. Now, the place you most often see that is in the game plans. It's got a shorter window, it doesn't get trained as often, and it very much can occur there on a regular basis. You can see right now with Sella, only one of her 3 game plans is actually maximized, but I'm only using the one anyway, so I don't mind. But I have one athlete right now who has just recently fallen off and needs to train that again. I switched his tactic not so long ago, and so he has not trained it quite as much as other areas, and he's having his struggles kind of across the board. But assuming that we're in the 95% territory for Sella, and that her focus is physical. The third method, my preferred method, is some manual adjustment. And you can do that in a couple of ways. But what I tend to do is I hop on over to the reports screen before altering her training. And I look at what it is I want to focus on. Now, first and foremost, speed is a killer attribute. It gets you where you're going faster. It allows you to cover a lot more court. Now, there's a lot of physical attributes that come together to make that really important, from your speed, footwork, balance, and agility, where natural fitness and stamina matter significantly less. These are your 4 most important attributes. But I tend to, first and foremost, apply speed. You can, within this game, also min-max a little bit. This is our progression bar to the next attribute point. So right now, Sella has a 13 in speed, but she's also 99% of the way towards a 14. A single session on speed will make that happen, where maybe balance could, but no way. If I train footwork, that's not going to hit the next level. So a little bit of min-maxing can pick up an extra attribute point a little bit earlier than it would otherwise. It could make a difference. You could throw in a serve spin at some point and get that up to a 10. But as I like to focus on speed first and foremost, we're going to add in a specific speed training session to get that next attribute point for what would have been a 95% Sella. So going back over to training, we're already set for physical fitness. We can manually adjust the training. And what I do for this one is I pick an empty slot. I add a session. I usually only add 1. Sometimes I'll add 2 on rare occasions, especially if they're at 99%. But we can search by physical, scroll down a little bit, and we have a 4 boost speed. The more balls you have, the more tennis balls you have in the training, the more effective the training is. So we're going to add a sprints session and then validate to confirm. That's going to give us a little bit less rest. Now, with less rest, it can hurt your morale. If morale's really bad, just open up an extra rest session or 2, and they'll get there. Care is good for physical condition, where rest gets less for the physical condition, but gets more for morale. And form bonuses are an animal kind of all of their own, and that's why I like the peak form, because when you look at the individual sessions themselves, it doesn't quite add up. Now, in tournament weeks themselves, sometimes an athlete's going to have a good performance, and sometimes they're not. If they have a good performance, they're playing late into the week, they're going to need recovery after. They're going to be fatigued. However, if they play one round and lose, like say Tobin here, if you manually go in during the middle of the week and start adding in sessions, even though the AI will automatically adjust their calendar and fill in with training sessions the rest of that week as soon as they get knocked out of that tournament, if you manually go in and start adding sessions to it and make them busier, 2 things are going to happen, and it always does. Even though they've got 6 open days ahead of them, and we just saw what a schedule looked like for Sella. It's pretty busy, jam-packed. But playing a match in one day, it somehow takes that week of a lot of rest and recovery to be ready for the next week. Tobin, first round exit, still only at 89%, even though we pretty much took the week off to recover. When you manually add those sessions in, it absolutely destroys their morale and their physical condition. He would be at 40% if I added even just a couple of sessions to that, it hits harder. So I do not mess with tournament weeks. I really, really stay away from that one. Let the tournament week play out. That also makes it easier to stick to the Monday morning scheduling on a weekly basis. If they have a tournament, leave it alone. When they don't have a tournament, you base off of what priority phase you're on with that particular athlete, and then look at these 3 key factors. And if they are fit enough, I will manually add in those 1 or 2 sessions. The other thing to look at in that is if you look at their overview screen, the current tactic that they are using, in this case offensive baseline play, that's a whole nother topic, but offensive baseline play is a fantastic one. It's OP compared to other tactics. I would strongly recommend you use that with all of your athletes, even if it involves totally retraining them from what they had. It's worth it. It is so worth it, especially in the long run. However, you could see from here, this dark blue forehand is key to offensive baseline play, as is focus. Secondary backhand, topspin, underspin are important with offensive baseline play. So from this screen, you can see a specific set of attributes. Now you see it doesn't show physical at all for offensive baseline play. Yet, this still impacts things more. Trust me on that part. Physical matters so much. It's going to have more benefit than everything else. But as time goes on, and we continue to train Sella, we're going to want to make sure that her focus is higher. And oh look, it's already higher. I have not gotten into her technical training phase yet. She's had the occasional session, and you have to train everything to make sure it doesn't decrease every once in a while. But we haven't focused on it yet. When we do, first place I'm going is that forehand. We're going to get that forehand up to a 12 or 13 before anything else gets there. But at the same time, that little extra session for a serve spin one time, suddenly she's a little bit stronger. Forehand consistency, that might be 1 session, maybe 2. Bring that one attribute up. So some min-maxing can be really helpful, but in general, your guide is the game plan. That's going to do it for this tutorial video. Hopefully that helped you. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments below. Any suggestions for the next tutorial video for this game, all ears. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in for this tutorial. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.